Okay, so this is take 2 on my draft keg wood burning stove. After I built my first one, I found some things I could have done better. I got a lot of good feedback from different forums and from people who viewed and subscribed to my channel, so thanks a bunch. One person that I got some really good info from is a guy named Sousaville, S-O-U-S-A-V-I-L-L-E, and he's gone very, very far down the path that I'm trying to go in making these mini-keg stoves. So I got some ideas from him. The other place I got a lot of ideas from is this book, Wood Stoves, and it's by a character named, and I hope I pronounce it right, Ole Wick. Anyway, he went up into Alaska and had to build his own wood stove, having no experience doing it, and apparently built a whole bunch of them and wrote a book on how to do it. Lots of good information in here. Unfortunately, it's way out of print and I had to buy a used copy, but it's a very good book. So one of the first ideas I got was from Sousaville, and that's to use a can opener to take the top of this keg off, so that you have easier access to the inside of it when you're building everything. And then when it's time to reassemble your keg, you just put this back in there and rivet it right down in there, and it reattaches and seals up just fine. The reason you can do that is that on these kegs there's a lip of steel that goes around here that actually recesses down inside of the can, so that you can just rivet it and it'll hold just fine. So that was the first idea. Another idea I got was I just took another walk through Menards, and I found a section where they have already ready-made stovepipes and things like this. And I found a 3-inch by 5-foot stovepipe that I cut down, but it was like, you know, I think I paid $6 for this, and it's galvanized steel, and it should work perfect for a chimney for this. One of the first things I need to do is actually make a door in here to serve as a door and a draft hole to let air in. And in the book he shows kind of a neat way to do it so that you don't have to use hinges, and I'm going to get started on that. The door that I'm going to make in here, the technical term for it is a Stoke hole, and the one I'm going to make is round, and it has a Stoke hole cover that you just sit down on it and it seals, and then you can just pull it off with a handle. And to do that we'll need a circular hole in this, and I've decided, looking at the geometry of this, that the best diameter is going to be right about 4.5 inches, and using this miracle which is called math, I figured out that to make a circular piece of steel to come out of here with the correct diameter, or with the correct diameter, I need about a 14.25 inch piece of steel, and I'm going to cut that out. Also, the Stoke hole collar is actually folded over and then crimped onto this, and I'll show how to do that. But it needs to be so that I can fold it in half, and it needs to be tall enough to fit on here, and so that when I pull the Stoke hole cover off, you know, there's plenty of room and all of that. So it has to be, for this particular thing, 14.25 inches long by 5 inches tall, and I'm going to cut that out and show you in just a sec. By the way, this is 26 gauge steel, and I've cut out my 14.25 by 5 inch tall piece, and I drew a line down the length of it at 2 3/8 inches. Now I've got to fold this over on itself, and to do that I just need to lightly score this, not super hard. This is a cold chisel. It's meant for metal and not wood, and they're a very different thing from wood chisels. So I'm going to take this and lightly tap along that line just to make a swirl, so it's easy to bend, and it bends in a consistent place in there. So I've folded the piece of metal in half. It was pretty easy to do. As you can, well, you may not be able to see it, but one side is longer than the other, folded down, and that's for the crimping, to be able to crimp this onto the lid or onto the stove. And the next thing I need to do is fold this into a circle, or as close to a circle as I can get it, and you want the shorter side to be on the outside. Now I've got my Stoke hole cover kind of bent. It's more or less round. I'm going to have to work on that a little bit. But the next step is to butt these two ends together, and to do that I've got a little 2 by 2 inch piece of steel that I'm going to put here and there, put everything together and rivet it in place. Real important to get that well up in so that it doesn't interfere with, so that the bottom of this doesn't interfere with the rim, and you'll see all of this when it comes time to crimp everything together. So I've completed the Stoke hole collar. I did 2 rivets on each side to butt the ends together, and these are steel rivets, and they're just regular pop rivets. These ones are an 1/8 inch by an 1/8 inch rivets, and they're adequate. Just make sure you get the steel ones and not the aluminum ones. So the next step, now that I've got my collar about as round as I can get it, is to cut the hole out of this, out of the front of the stove. And I'm going to want to draw a line around the inside of the collar, and then the hole that I cut out, I'm going to show you what I do. But the first step is to draw around the inside of the collar. So I've got the line drawn, and I'm not going to cut along the line. I'm going to cut about 3/16 of an inch in from that. Reason being that I want to have a lip that I can bend up to attach my collar to. So I've got just a sheet metal hole cutter, and I'm going to use that to cut my. So now I've got the hole cut out, and it's a little bit smaller than the internal diameter of my stovepipe collar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pair of pliers and bend this up all the way around to about 45 degrees, and I'll show you that when I'm done. So now I've bent the rim of this up to be like a little volcano rim. You can see it from the back, and the next step is to seat the collar in there. I might have to do a little bit more tweaking so that this fits down. And remember that the inside part of this hangs over a little bit the outside part. So I'm going to put this through the center and then crimp the inside of this up against there to hold it so it can't come out. So you can see I've inset the Stoke hole collar onto the lid, and it can't be pulled out because I've bent the longer edge of the Stoke hole collar over the top of this, and it can't be pushed in because the shorter collar is up over the edge of that rim, and it can't possibly go anywhere. So it could look a little better. But as far as function, this is going to be fantastic, I think. Airtight and no nonsense. So now we have to make, if this is the Stoke hole collar, what we have to do is we have to make a Stoke hole cover. And to make that, I have to make a Stoke hole cover collar that fits perfectly over this so that it slides on and off with gentle friction. But relatively airtight, and I'm going to start with about a 15.5 inch long piece of steel so that there's a little bit of overlap so that I can rivet the collar together. and about 2 1/4 inches tall, so it'll slide down on here and overlap. And so now I'm going to make the Stoke hole cover collar. Okay, so I've completed that piece, and it slides on and off. There's some friction there. It's fairly tight, but you can get it off. And once I put the handle on this collar, it'll be a lot better. See, it comes right off. You want it to be somewhat tight because you want it to be airtight. But you want to be able to slide it on and off fairly easily. So that's it. So now that I've got this fitting pretty well, the next step is to bend the top 1/4 inch or so of this Stoke hole cover collar outward, so that I can put another plate on top and crimp it over. So you can see what I've done here. Slides on and off nice and easy, and I bent that about 1/4 inch over. Now what I have to do is make the cover for this, and it needs to be big enough to do that, and then I need an extra little bit on the outside so that I can fold it over and crimp this together so that it will have the Stoke hole cover with the plate on there, and you'll see how that works in a little bit. The other thing I'm going to do is I'll have to cut a draft hole, and I've got kind of a neat little system in mind to do this. So now you can see I cut out a circle of steel just a little bit wider than my Stoke hole collar, and when it comes time I will bend those edges over, and I'll find a good place to do that at. Trust me, it does line up probably about like that, and then I'll bend those over, and we'll go from there. In the meantime, I was going to show you the idea I had for Stoke hole, or a draft hole, and this is from that Wood Burning Stoves book. Basically, you build up a collar around, this is going to be a juice can that I'm going to use, build up a collar around that so that the juice can slides in and out, and then you have slits in the side that control the amount of air that get in, so you can close it all the way down and open it all the way up, basically without having to touch any hinges or anything. You just grab the can, open it up, or close it, and it's really controllable. So now what I need to do is I need to outline this, line up the two pieces of steel here, line up the draft can where I'm going to want it, and then cut a hole that's slightly smaller than the inside of this so that I can build up a collar the same way that I built the collar for this. One thing I forgot to tell you, and when I was making the this collar, is that I made the collar before I cut the hole in the front of the stove, because it's easier to cut a hole to fit your collar than it is to build a collar to fit your hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the collar to fit the can first, and then once I get that made, then we'll use the collar to cut the hole in here, using the same principles that I used to cut this, so a little bit smaller than the internal diameter, a little bit smaller. So here's what I ended up doing. I made a collar similar to that last one, where you fold it over the top, and then put and butt the two ends together. And now I need to, and you see the outer one is shorter than the inner one. I'm going to make a hole in here smaller than that, and fix this to this plate the same way I fixed this to that. So you can see what I've done here. I've put that collar on, secured it in place, and I've started bending up the edges around here, and I'm going to finish bending those edges over to seal the top of the cover to the collar. Okay, so I've completed the assembly here of the front part of my stove. You'll have to visualize it a little bit, but this is going to set in there. And then, so this is your draft. That's I cut, you know, some triangles in there, and you can decide how much air you want to have coming in and out, and like that. If you open it all the way, a lot of air will go in, and you can clamp it down as much as you want to. And then this is, I'll take it off for a second, but this is how you feed it, like this. You lift this off. Oh, now it's not going to do it, but there. So it lifts right off, and so whenever you want to feed the fire, you take the door off, put some more in. Made the door nice and big so I can get lots of, you know, some bigger wood in there, like wrist size, so it burns a little longer. That was one complaint with the last stove, is that the wood going in it had to be too small. So there we go. This is the so if you look at the stove, it'll be like this, and then there's the stoke hole. You stoke the fire through there. I just made a little handle for that. There's the stoke hole cover, and then here's the draft can. You know, you like that. That's it. And I made just a little simple handle for each of those. So that's the completed front of the stove. Actually, looking at the plans, this was going to be the toughest part, and I wanted to tackle that first. Stoke hole cover draft can, and the draft can was just made out of a little pineapple juice can, and it's obviously it's replaceable, so and it'd be easy to replace. This other stuff, this metal fabrication, that was actually fairly difficult because I've never done anything like that before. I decided to start small with these small stoves because I do want to build a bigger camp stove out of sheet metal, but I didn't want to be out a bunch of money in sheet metal before I kind of had an idea of how things worked, and I'm just kind of building some miniature models here to figure out what works and where to put baffles and how to make doors, and you know, just testing stuff out without spending a huge amount of money. So the next step here is to attach the chimney, and like I said, this is a 3-inch by 60-inch piece of stovepipe, and I'm going to put it on the back here, and this will be like this, and well, more like this. It's going to come out of the back, basically. Instead of having it come out of the end cap and make a turn, I decided to have it come out of the top because of where I want to put my baffle. So now the next step is to make a collar for that, and then cut a hole back here to fit the collar. Again, because it's easier to cut a hole to fit a collar than it is to make a collar fit a hole. And besides, I have an excellent template for how big to make the collar, because basically all my collar has to do is fit around this. So I'm going to get started with that. I've decided, after how difficult it was to do all of this work, that I probably will use the can opener to zip this back side off here, and then just rivet it back on later. So I'm going to get started fashioning a collar. This one is going to be a little bit different than the last one I made, a little bit easier to put together and stuff. So as I was saying, this collar is a lot easier to make. I just, this is a 3-inch pipe, so I took a 10-inch by 2.5-inch piece of my 26 gauge steel, and I formed it around the end of this pipe. The pipe is already crimped and everything. It's nice, so that it fits nice and snug. And then put 2 rivets in the overlapping part here, and those rivets actually kind of help hold on to the pipe a little bit. Now, what I have to do is same thing I did every other time I made a hole for the collar, and this is the stovepipe collar is the name for it, and I have to mark it on here and then cut out a hole that's a little bit smaller than what I just marked out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So I've got my hole cut, and you can see I've taken a pair of pliers and kind of bent the edges of the hole out like a little volcano lip there. And then I took my collar and I cut every 1/2 inch or so. I cut a little tab, and the tabs that are bent in will go inside, the tabs that are out will go outside, and then I'll bend each of these tabs to fit snugly and securely around there to form a nice tight seal. And that way it can't be pushed in, can't be pulled out. So you can see I've put the baffle on, or the collar for my stovepipe, and it'll slide right in, and it's nice and tight and won't cause any problems. Now, exactly how long that stovepipe is going to be, I'm not certain. Probably no more than 3 feet, but we'll see. You see I cut the back off, and then let's see how much of this you can see here. On the inside you see those tabs are kind of folded over to hold it in place. So now I have one more part to kind of put on, and now I'm kind of glad I opened up the back end of this, because it'll be easier to put in and fit through the back than through the front, and that's a baffle. And so what a baffle does is, if your fire's in the firebox and you don't have a baffle in here, what'll happen is the fire and smoke will all just go up through the chimney and right out. Whereas there's a bunch of different ways you can put a baffle in. One would be to put one vertically, like this, just to prevent the smoke from having a direct route to the chimney. But if you do that, if you do a vertical one in this kind of a stove, then the firebox is so short. So what I've decided to do is put in like a little horizontal one, so that the smoke will hit the baffle, have to come around to the front, heat up my cooking surface, and I'll mount something there eventually, and then make its way out through the smokestack. And so I'm going to get started on fabricating one of those. I'll probably just fabricate it, install it, and show you how it works. So I've installed the baffle. It was just a plain sheet metal that I bent the ends up on. I'll show a close-up of this, and then I just riveted it in. Pretty simple install, and I'm hoping that increases the efficiency of my stove a little bit. So there it is. The idea is that the smoke is down in here, and the fire is down in here, and it can't just go up the chimney. It has to come around to the front and then back, and hopefully heat up my warming surface. The next thing I'm going to do is put some of this, it's called expanded metal, and I'm going to use that as the grate in here. So I'm going to install some of that. I'm going to install it through the back, because the back opening is a little wider and I can get a little wider piece in. And then I'm going to put the back cap back on and get that nice and tight and sealed up. So there I am so far. I've got the fire grate in. I might bow it down a little bit to just get a little bit more room, but you can see there's plenty of room for decent sized wood in there. And then eventually when I put the front on, it'll be here, and then you know, plenty of room to get plenty of wood in there. This is about a 10-inch thing, so I can get about 10-inch long, probably wrist-sized logs in there. And I've gone ahead and riveted the back on. As you can see, it rivets right back on because of that lip, so you can cut that off without any major consequences. And now, because I put that baffle in there, it's a lot more sturdy, and I've designed some legs. I'll put them on here eventually, but those should also, by the time I get that on there, should make it nice and sturdy. So I built a little stand to sit this on, and it's I used some 1/8 inch steel. This stuff is difficult to work with. I originally tried to bend this as one piece, but it's just, in my hands, it was impossible, so I had to cut it up, and I made it basically so you could take it apart with a screwdriver if you wanted to. It's very, very sturdy, no problems with it. I just made one brace, and everything else, you see I made a little cradle for it. So the next thing I need to do here is I need to make my cooking surface, and I've decided just to use a piece of this expanded metal, and I'm going to mount that to it really, really simply. This is so stiff that no camp pot that I'm going to put on there is going to be heavy enough to bend it. I'm just going to mount it with a single number 10 stove bolt drilled right through here, and I'm going to lock it in place with a flat washer. So I got it on with the one number 10 stove bolt, and I didn't like it. It was too wobbly. So I added another layer and just secured it at the corners with number 8 stove bolts and some washers, and it's a nice level cooking platform, and I think that should work pretty well. So here's the completed stove. You've got the stoke hole cover, stoke hole, there's a grate in there, baffle, and then your draft can here to control the amount of air coming in. I ended up just going with a 3-foot chimney. I may shorten it later, depends. Everything's nice and sturdy, came together real well. I've added a little oven since my last video, and everything works really well in there. I added the oven because I wasn't really all that satisfied with the heat that I was getting off of the stove as I built it the first time. With the oven in place, I was able to get a temperature of, with the draft can out and a full fire going in there, I put a oven thermometer in there, and it pegged the oven thermometer at over 600 degrees. So I put the draft can in, and I was able to get the temperature down, around the 400 range, and it stayed pretty steady. The oven thing itself just has a little hole in the top for the smokestack to come out, and it's really pretty simple. It wasn't really anything extra to build. And I baked some muffins earlier. And just by adding that little top to the stove, I was able to increase the usability of my little keg stove quite a bit. My two primary cooking vessels that I cook with are this blue enameled cup that I've put some fiberglass wick around there, and the MSR Titan. And so I just designed the housing to be big enough to fit those, and it works great. Like I said, for boiling water, what I do is I put this in with water in it, obviously, put the door on to the little oven, and then you want to run it wide open. And then if you want to bake, you just put that in a little bit further, and it'll regulate the temperature.